You're listening to Following On with me, Neil Manthorp, alongside Durham Hall of Famer Steve Harmison. And a reminder that we bring you more live and exclusive international cricket on talkSPORT 2 next week with commentary of England's white ball tour of New Zealand. The first T20 gets underway on Saturday, the 18th of October. Right, let's talk about the West Indies with Machel St Patrick Hewitt, host of the brilliant Caribbean Cricket Podcast. Shocking, well, I don't know whether shocking, was anybody shocked? Very strong Indian team, thrashed the West Indies in the first test in Ahmedabad by an innings and 140 runs inside 3 days, Mash. Just before we come to you, actually, let's just remind ourselves of what Captain Roston Chase said about the issues back in the Caribbean and how he hopes that they can improve in the future.
I don't really want to touch too much on that, but what I would say, yes, there is obviously a struggle in the Caribbean for finances. So if whatever help we can get, if they're planning to get the help, I hope that we do get it so that we could, strengthen the infrastructure for the cricket. I think the systems in the Caribbean are a bit poor in terms of training facilities and stuff, but I'm not using that as an excuse or something to hide behind for the poor performances that we've been putting out lately. I still think the onus is on the players to find some way to turn out runs and wickets and stuff. So if I said no, I wouldn't be a true West Indian. Obviously, we're down right now, but there have been times where we've been up and other teams have been down and they've risen. So I would never say that a resurrection is not possible for us, but we're going to have to take some small steps and try to find our way back up the ladder.
That was Roston Chase. He says they're in a difficult period. Mash, they were just never in the test, were they? And, they're not the only team to have been thrashed in Ahmedabad, but you just get the sense that the cricket world is so desperate for the West Indies to become more consistent or more competitive. First of all, your initial thoughts on that tour before we come on to yet another rescue package that has been proposed?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, the result, as you said at the top, nothing about that result was a surprise. I think if you, me or Harmy had to predict what was going to happen in that test match before it started, it would have gone exactly how we predicted. And the worst thing is, in some quarters, myself probably included, because of the 27 all-out versus Australia, there's even an argument to say that this is an improvement, given what happened a couple of months ago. And weirdly, actually, this defeat, they actually lost by more in 2018 against India. So that's a very scant kind of reward to look at there. But I think all of that just more so speaks to something that I've said on the show many times before, that there has to be a second tier. If Test cricket is going to continue, and if we're going to have all of this conversation about trying to protect Test cricket, then there has to be a second tier of cricket for nations that, for whatever reason, are now at a stage where they cannot compete on anything approaching any kind of regular basis against the top side. So in the certainly in the short to mid-term, I think the ICC have to make a move on that front and find a way to fund a second tier of Test cricket.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the second tier of Test cricket. I look at, and the West Indies is obviously the prime example. It's the system. I don't think so. The system in Test cricket is broken. I think, who do you blame here from a West Indies point of view? You can't blame the players that are playing there, because they're the ones that have decided they're not going to go off, chase money and go down the franchise route and represent the West Indies. So I think you've got to give them a huge amount of credit. But if you go down the sort of the two-tier system, like Man has said many times, one, you'll never get out of tier 2 into tier 1. So that for me is one aspect of it. And the other aspect of it, are the West Indies, are you looking at a two-tier system to try and provide better cricket outcome for your West Indies side? Or you're just sort of happy with masking the problem that we're not fixing the real fundamental problem is we can't get people to represent the West Indies in T20s, 50 over and red ball cricket. And that seems to be the problem that I don't think these legends that have coming out of the woodwork and saying this is what the West Indies cricket need to do, they're not bringing up any solutions. So what are the solutions to try and help that, rather than say, oh well, we'll take the easy way out and play two-tier Test cricket?
So I'm gonna try and approach that from two different angles here. So I think the first thing is my only desire for a second tier of cricket is to help the team and to help the players. I think I put something out the other day, and I don't know if you're both going to be shocked at this or agree, but I genuinely believe that the West Indies are no better than Ireland and Zimbabwe. And that sounds like I'm being disrespectful to Ireland, Zimbabwe, or maybe even the West Indies, but I genuinely believe that's our level. Maybe throw in Bangladesh and Pakistan, because Pakistan are in free fall right now, right? But I genuinely believe that's our level. And when that's your level, there's a line of argument that some people have that you can't get better if you don't expose yourself against the best. But after certainly in the whole of the 21st century, I don't remember West Indies ever playing well in India in the 21st century. Yes, there was the shock win at the Gabba last year, but that was an anomaly compared to what's happened in most of the 21st century, right? When West Indies go to England, there's been a couple 2-1s, but outside of the one Test victories, we're defeated inside 2.5 days, right? So when we go to South Africa, it's similarly, there's licks upon licks in South Africa. So and we're about to go to New Zealand. It doesn't get any easier. We went to New Zealand at the end of the year. So when I look at those games against the kind of good Test nations, I don't see any level of consistent improvement that suggests that we're learning to get better. And then when you throw in your point, Harmy, about the fact, obviously, that West Indies suffer more than most when it comes to T20 cricket, taking away some of our players before they can even learn to play red ball cricket. I think there's just a line of argument that says, let's try and learn to win. And to learn to win, you have to play teams that are in and around you. But that's one argument. The second way of looking at it is to say that there are loads of deficiencies off the pitch that are nothing to do necessarily with the players, that mean that the players are hamstrung by the system that they're in. They can't get better because the system limits their ability to get better. Whether that Russ and Chase spoke about infrastructure, right, in the Caribbean. This has been an issue now for going on 25 years, if not more. So there's an infrastructure issue. There's a huge funding issue. We've just had the big press conference last week by Cricket West Indies, where they've basically admitted that they're broke. And we've just shortened our first class season. We've got rid of 2 teams and said they've literally admitted they can't afford to fund a bigger first class system. They've admitted that the money's just not there. They've admitted, believe it or not, that they've had to send Brian Lara and Viv Richards out to India to basically go and meet Indian philanthropists to see if they can find anyone that wants to invest in West Indies cricket. We're broke. So if we're broke and we're saying that there's a financial issue in terms of fixing these off the pitch issues for the cricketers, how can we improve in that regard as well? So I don't want to say there's no light at the end of the tunnel, but it's very bleak. And when you add on the defeats on top of it, it's hard to, like, you're stuck in a negative loop because the players aren't getting better, the defeats are getting worse, and there's nothing that we can do about it at the same time. And you can't get funded if the team's not any good, but there's no money to make the team any good. So you're just stuck in this loop, not going anywhere.
Mash, it's a candlelight rather than a spotlight. But I just wanted to ask you about the sort of parochial thinking and closed-mindedness that there has been around West Indian cricket for a while. That one of the most enlightening podcasts that you did on the Caribbean Cricket Podcast was about the West Indian diaspora around the world, and you know the descendants of West Indians who are playing cricket at a very high level. Could they be encouraged back? And there were administrators, you said, who said, no, you have to be born and bred in the Caribbean, or at least born in the Caribbean, first generation, that kind of closed-minded thinking that doesn't exist with the football team, as you pointed out. And, you know, that's just one example of you know, you were very frustrated, weren't you? Saying like, open your minds. Like, we need to think out of the box. And you know, you have to be born in the Caribbean, you have to play domestic cricket, all of those kind of rules, which are passe, they're long gone. Are there other examples that I don't want to get you wound up here. I'm the one who's sounding frustrated now.
Yeah, so interestingly enough, so again, in that press conference 10 days ago, they announced that they now have their talent scout manager they didn't give any details, and I probably need to go and find out some more to the story, but they admitted for the first time in public that they have reached out to some players in the diaspora to see their interest in representing the West Indies. And I'm going to blow my own horn here. I reckon they wouldn't have done that if I hadn't said anything. Because it was raised in a couple of press conferences a few months ago, and they said that they weren't going down that line. So obviously something has changed. So maybe they're starting to realise you can't just keep doing the same thing again and again and again and expecting that results are going to miraculously change. Now, I'm going to suggest something as well that they could do to look outside the box, which they haven't said yet. And I'm intrigued to see what you and Harmy say here. They've made it clear that they want to try and get funding from elsewhere in the world to help West Indies cricket, as well as trying to engage corporate Caribbean. It seems that the Saudis are very interested in getting involved in cricket. I've now openly saying that West Indies should try to reach out to Saudi involvement in West Indies cricket. If the Saudis want to get involved, there's no better project to get involved in than West Indies cricket. That's all I'm going to say. That's where they should cast their attention.
Well, Mash, I support Newcastle United. And on 14 years of Mike Ashley, the Saudis came in, and I tell you what, you want to see the party that the Newcastle fans had. And yes, you know, we've got to be realistic. The Saudis come with the huge amount of scrutiny of the human rights element and all that, the stuff that goes with, you know, what is Saudi Arabia but I mean, 20,000 Geordies stand out St James's Park when Mike Ashley went. The Saudis went. They just wanted their football team fixed. And that might not be a popular view, and probably won't be a popular view. And I stand by that when somebody wants to throw criticism at me, because I was at St James's Park yesterday again, working on talkSPORT for the Nottingham Forest game, and there's 52,000 people who are completely different mindset to where they were 4 years ago when the Saudis hadn't come into Newcastle United. If there is money like that to come in, and the West Indies is a project of historical value, then look, money into the game produces better cricket. Better cricket produces more interest. More interest produces a vibrant section of the world, which has been lost for 30 years. So yeah, I wouldn't be adverse against Saudi Arabia coming into it. You know, you look at documentaries with Matchroom and things like that, and what they're doing with boxing and everything. They're coming in eventually. So why not in that part of the world? So, but there will, undoubtedly, you will have the people who are opposed to Saudi coming in. So it won't be easy. I know that firsthand from supporting Newcastle United. But I look at where we were 3.5 years ago under Mike Ashley to where we are now. The actual vibrancy of the football club is ridiculous. And I understand, and I'm with the other side of it. But at the end of the day, we can't control that side of it. We can't control what's going on inside Saudi Arabia. So on that side, I wouldn't have a problem with their money coming into cricket, because I think they'll make cricket better, especially to come into that part of the world, which is dying.
Well, I think, as you say, it's coming in regardless. So whether it comes to the West Indies or not, it's coming into the game. So it's how the game then decides to react once that money does come in.
One thing they do need to do, Cricket West Indies, however, Mash, is get you on the board.
Yeah. I've been waiting for my invite. I'm mild surprised it hasn't turned up yet, but maybe it's because I wouldn't be able to hold my tongue in certain situations. But to be fair, it's interesting that you say that, because Carlos Brathwaite has just he stood for election in the Barbados Cricket Association and he won, got the most votes, and is now a director in the Barbados Cricket Association. And when I spoke to Carlos Brathwaite about it and said, what convinced you to stand for it? He said, we need more players from my generation that understand where cricket is at right now and how that, because Carlos's point was, with no disrespect to those that have gone before, cricket from the 80s is no longer cricket now. And so Carlos is I could stand on the sidelines and I could do commentary and I could talk about the ills and the woes, or I can go and get involved and bring the game up to date with the challenges we face now. And his experiences of having navigated that as a player. So if not me, certainly players from that generation, we could do with them getting involved. And again, without being disrespectful, not always thinking that the answer lies with let us go to our legends. Like, we need to ask ourselves the question, can 2025 problems be solved by thinking from the 1990s? I think it's harsh, but I think we do have to ask ourselves those questions.